Well, hello, and welcome to a new episode of SportsDay Rangers. I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant. This is our weekly spinoff of the Dallas Morning News SportsDay Insider podcast. Every week, John, the venerable Rangers team historian, and I, the venerable beat writer, talk about the last week in Rangers baseball, chat with a former Ranger, and we'll revisit a memorable moment in club history.
So this past week, the Rangers finished 3-3. Seems to be a familiar refrain, either 3-3 or 2-4. They won 2 out of 3 in Baltimore, and then a very tough series against the Mariners over the weekend, losing 2 out of 3 in extra innings. And we're going to take a little further with our guest this week and chat with a player that predates even my time with the club originally, although I was with him for the last 5 years, Charlie Hough, pitching for the Rangers from 1980 to 1990. And then in the archives in Arlington, I'm going to reminisce a little bit about Charlie. Had a lot of memorable things, and we'll look at a couple of them this week.
And Charlie predated my time with the Rangers as well, but I did cover Charlie for 2 years, his last 2 years in the big leagues, and I've got some memorable moments in there.
Bottom of the ninth, bases loaded. Here comes Jimmy Dale from Baker Brothers Plumbing, AC, and Electrical.
Thanks, Chuck. When your home pitches curveballs, Baker Brothers knocks it out of the park.
Home run, Baker Brothers. Incredible.
As the official home service partner of your Texas Rangers, we're offering $300 off a tank or tankless water heater.
Another winning call. Visit callbakernow.com or dial 214-342-1171 today.
Baker Brothers.
Great service.
If you want to interact with us, you can find us each week on X. I'm at Evan_P_Grant, and John is at Ranger Blake.
Much easier. You can also reach out to the Dallas Morning News on any of the paper's social channels. And again, find the podcast in the SportsDay Insider feed wherever you like to consume podcasts. And by the way, Evan had a little hair when he covered Charlie back with the Marlins.
John had to get that in. Make sure to check out our last episode. We talked to the newest member of the Rangers Hall of Fame, Elvis Andrus, and that is a good jumping off point. How was Hall of Fame weekend, John, as a Hall of Famer? You're the only Hall of Famer who's also the curator of the Hall of Fame.
It was a little easier for me than the last Hall of Fame induction when I had to do a speech. It was kind of nice to just relax, but I thought the weekend went really well. This year, we brought back Buddy Bell and Charlie Hough, and Buddy hadn't been back. I don't know if Buddy's been back since he was inducted in 2004 because he's been working. He was a manager and a baseball executive, and he had a great time. It was so nice to see him come back because for me, he's one of the great guys. And one of the cool moments for me was on Saturday. Marcus Semien and Jake Berger, who both were drafted by the White Sox when Buddy was running player development, made a point of wanting to see him. So he came down to the dugout early before the Hall of Fame ceremony, and just the connection and everything. Boch came out. Buddy and Dayton Moore have got a real, it's like a baseball fraternity, and it was a lot of fun for me, that part. Obviously, having Adrian and Michael back to honor Elvis and everything was fun too. But, it's just the Hall of Fame connection is always a fun one for me.
Yeah, from my perspective, and I watched most of the speech down on the field, I thought it was a really nice ceremony. There was one moment where one of the Hall of Famers awkwardly got up from his seat and seemed to be directing traffic. That Hall of Famer will remain nameless, but he may be involved in this podcast. I don't know why he got up and felt the need to do that.
Well, we were looking for the boots.
Yes, the boots that they give to every Hall of Famer. How many times do you think the Hall of Famers then wear the boots?
It's probably like the boots we gave to President Biden last August. They end up in their museum.
I see. I thought Elvis's speech was really nice. I thought he touched on a lot of stuff that he picked up from Adrian's Hall of Fame speech in Cooperstown last year. Just an immense number of thank yous and a lot of gratitude. But I was really touched by his last lines about be thankful, be joyful, and most importantly, be loved. And I think that really sums up who Elvis is as a player and who he is as a person.
And the other great thing was they all stuck to the schedule. The speeches were on time. And in my position, that's always something. I'm sitting there looking at the script, making sure we're on time. And unlike some previous speeches of Hall of Famers who will go nameless today, it worked out great. Now, it was a great weekend, and I think Elvis really, really enjoyed it and was really, really touched.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And it meant a lot to him to retire as a Ranger. It meant a lot to him to go into this Hall of Fame. It meant a lot that there were a bunch of 2010 teammates there with him. You know, Matt Harrison, Mitch Moreland, Derek Collin, the new pitching coach at UT Dallas. Who else from 2010?
Craig
Michael
Gentry
Young
was
Craig
there.
Gentry.
It was a good group.
It really was. And so that was nice to see. It's kind of a mini 2010 reunion. But it does bring me to one point that I want to start to hammer out with you, John, and that is who's next? We're over this Hall of Fame, so who's next? I have my list of the next
Why
five
don't you
Rangers.
give me your list before I
Before you
weigh
comment?
in? Yes.
All right. So here's my list in order, okay? I'm going to say that for me, and this is one that I think should already be in, is Ron Washington. I think Wash needs to be in. As long as the theme is that this 2010 team changed the direction of the franchise, Wash needs to be in. I think.
Let me write these down so I don't forget.
Okay. I think along those lines as well, and I may have mentioned this at the Sabre convention, which you spoke the other day, that I think Colby Lewis needs to be in this Hall of Fame. More postseason starts than anybody for this team. Really embodied what the rebirth of the Texas Rangers pitching staff was. Third, John Daniels. Architect of the 2010 teams that went to the playoffs, brought in Elvis, brought in Matt Harrison, just did a great, brought in Josh Hamilton. I mean, so I think JD deserves to be in at some point in time, especially since there is a precedent with Tom Grieve, who is in partly for his contributions as GM. You and I have gone back and forth on this one for a while. The other pitcher that I think doesn't get enough recognition is Rick Helling. Again, at a top point in time when the ballpark was almost unpitchable, Rick was fearless there. Won 20 games in 98, last 20-game winner in Rangers history. Pitched over 200 innings, 5 consecutive years? I just thought that Rick deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. And the last one I'm going to say here is, and look, there's not going to mention one guy because I think that there's some issues off the field related to that, because I think he's alienated himself in baseball related to some steroids issues. But I think Will Clark, who really kind of was the final piece for 96. I know he came in 94, but he was the final piece in the kind of the leader of the 96 team. And I think this team took on a lot of personality traits from Will.
I think those are all good suggestions. I think, and there are 27 people in this Hall of Fame. We put a lot of, we put 4 people in the first year in 2003. We put 3 people in the second year. And since then it's been, and, we had a committee, and we probably need to you
disbanded the committee.
My recommendation now is that we have to, as a club, I think we have to take a look at where we go with this. Do you keep it to just the upper total elite, which is what look at the last 3 players, okay, just players: Elvis Andrus, Ian Kinsler, and Adrian Beltre.
Right.
That is the elite of the elite. And do we just look at some of these other errors? I'm a big, I am a believer. I've always tried to lean on the side of exclusivity. Now, we've talked about this. Every team has kind of a different standard. The Baltimore Orioles and the Boston Red Sox sometimes put in 3 or 4 guys a year. I just don't believe in that personally, but your list, as I said, is a good one. Wash, I think, just the number 1 guy is a no-brainer. And he's managing now. We'll see what happens, and we wish him well. I mean, that's one thing I think we need to do right now. He's going to be out the rest of the year, and, he's so beloved, and his name came up so many times over the weekend. And so I think that one is a no-brainer. And I think the players and general managers, executives, it's kind of a look-see basis. But again, it's kind of on me at this point to try to talk to management and everything, see where they want to go with it.
Well, and my view of the Club Hall of Fame is a little bit different because I think that the Club Hall of Fame longevity or individual singular contributions should matter because it should be a celebration of the club and its history. And so guys that played significant roles, and you as a historian, I think, understand the role that, like, look, if you bring a Rick Helling back, if you bring a Will Clark back, there is a whole generation of Ranger fans who grew up knowing nothing about these people as players, and to bring them back educates this fan base, not just on the players that they saw, but on the history of this franchise. And I think that's an important element, particularly in a team's Hall of Fame, especially a team like the Rangers who have something of a shorter history, but unfortunately it hasn't been until 2023. It had lacked a championship. I think with Boston and Baltimore, it's easier to say longevity or just some moment because fans already have that diehard attachment. And there is a group of that here in Texas. There's certainly a group of that, but there's also the idea that this has always been, quote unquote, a Cowboys market, blah, 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 blah. And I think anything you can do to emphasize the history of this club is going to, in the long term, be a real positive.
Well, we need to move on, but I will say one more thing, and I agree with you. And everybody on your list highlights memorable periods in Rangers history. And as I look towards next year, it's the 30th anniversary of the 1996 team, which I have brought up to several members of that group who are all, I said, I really probably do need to do something because that was the first year we made the playoffs in franchise history. It was a very tight-knit group of guys, as you know, very similar to the 10 and 11 group. And I think we'd have real good participation. So all of that's on the table, but good suggestions. And now let's move on to 2025.
Are you going to ask me to be on your reconstituted committee?
We'll work it out. We'll see what happens here. But let's just look at the week. It seemed pitching and defense seemed to be the highlight. The Rangers had a tough week. Obviously, offensively, went 6 for 37 with runners in scoring position in the 3 extra inning games, which they won one of. It seems to be kind of they're stringing together more base runners. They just can't get the big hit.
Yeah, and listen, again, this is something that if this team got hot right now for 2 weeks, it could change the complete complexion of the season. I just don't know if you can get enough guys hot. That is the main concern. And right now, my major concern is the guy who has fallen under the microscope for me is Josh Jung, who's just had a horrible June, unfortunately. And, we are now almost 2 years out from when he made the All-Star team as a rookie in 23. And since then, the numbers have not been good. Now, there were a couple of injuries in there, but he's been healthy this year, and the numbers just haven't been good. He's now got over 1,000 Major League plate appearances and crossed that threshold in June, and I think it's something of an inflection point. That's the point in time where you get established or you get a reputation, and I think Josh has got to pick it up. The big problem I've seen with him in particular is he's a little bit over-aggressive at the plate, but in particular up and in. And I worked out some numbers on what he had been through over the weekend, and he's just the numbers are a little bit concerning, to be frank with you.
Let's look a little bit at what you wrote earlier, or last week, I guess it is now, about the way the ballpark is playing. And I don't know, after your story, I tried to look just watching the games, and it is kind of interesting to watch balls when they're off the bat, to watch how the outfielders are kind of looking at it, thinking the ball is going to carry more than it does. Or 3 or 4 examples yesterday against, we're taping Monday, the Sunday game against Seattle. You've done a little bit of research on that. I know testing, and they're looking at it. Is there something to that?
I don't know what it would be. You know, the temperature in the ballpark the one thing I thought about was, has the temperature changed? And I think it's been set at 74 for at least 2 years.
It's been set at 74 since
21.
The energy situation. Yeah, we brought it down 2 degrees.
So
up
that's
2 degrees.
So that's been consistent. The balls, you know, there is some thought in baseball, and Major League Baseball acknowledges that drag is up in baseball this year. The players, you've heard some chatter, not just from the Rangers, but you heard some chatter all around the league. Andrew McCutchen, I heard some chatter from some Washington Nationals when we were up there about the seams being raised a little bit. And Major League Baseball does acknowledge that if the seams are up a little bit, even 1/100th of an inch, it can change the drag on a baseball. Their statement is that these are still hand sewn, and there's going to be some variability in just how tightly everything is stitched. But nobody has really complained to me about that. I've just kind of heard chatter secondhand. The only thing I've heard at the ballpark is that there was, it's so hard to figure out that there could be an atmospheric condition because the roof is constantly closed, right? I think there was a door on the truck ramp that was broken, and so that it was open the whole time. It wasn't able to close. I don't know if that was allowing any wind through the tunnel and into the ballpark. I don't think that would be the case, but I do think the club has looked at that and made sure that door functions now. But I can't come up with a real reason why this has happened. There doesn't seem to be any change in the percentage of balls that players are barreling. There doesn't seem to be any percentage of change or any change in, you know, velocity averages on hard hit balls. And so I'm not real sure what the culprit might be, if there is one related to the ballpark.
Well, now it's time for us to bring our guest in, and the guest on this week's podcast, one of the best pitchers in club history. 35 years after leaving Arlington, Charlie Hough remains the Rangers' all-time leader in every pitching category, and we'll visit with him next. Well, our guest this week is one of the all-time great Texas Rangers. 25 Major League seasons, 216-game winner, 216-game loser as well, but with a 3.75 ERA. And Evan Grant came up with this stat: the only pitcher in Major League history to start at least 400 games, relieve in at least 400 games, and win at least 200 games, which is remarkable. Pitched 11 years for the Dodgers. The Rangers acquired him in July of 1980, one of the great moves the Rangers ever made. He's the club's all-time leading winner, 139 wins, 2,308 innings, 98 complete games, 1,452 strikeouts, and 313 starts. 6 times the Rangers Pitcher of the Year. He won 10-plus games in 9 straight seasons, 250-plus innings 5 times, and was a member of the inaugural class of the Texas Rangers Hall of Fame in 2003. One of the great knuckleball pitchers of all time, Charlie Hough. Charlie, thanks for joining us today.
This should be fun, John. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Charlie was just in Arlington for the Rangers Hall of Fame weekend. We presented him with his Hall of Fame jacket, and it was great to see you and Buddy Bell. What did you think of the weekend?
I thought it was great. Elvis was a heck of a player for the Rangers, and every time I've been back to Texas for that award ceremony, it's been a lot of fun, and just to see guys I don't see but once every few years.
And we're going to get into your story in just a minute, but I wanted to bring up one thing as you talk about that, and it was kind of neat. In the middle of the game, Evan, on Friday night after Nathan Eovaldi came out of the game, he had seen Charlie, I think, at the ceremony, and he asked him to come down, and Charlie got a chance to talk to him and Josh Sborz. So that was kind of a neat moment because you had both of those guys in the minor leagues with the Dodgers.
Yeah, those two kids, they're a long way apart in the age, but I think it was my last year actually coaching every day that Nate was on our team, and what a great kid he was. And Then later on, Spores came through the organization, loved him, great attitude, hard worker. And to see him finish that World Series, a couple of years ago, what a thrill. I mean, that was a thrill for me to watch it. So, and both of them.
Yeah, Nate's going to go down as one of the all-time teammates in Rangers history, Charlie. Just yesterday or Sunday, the Rangers had like a Little League parade around the field, and it was an amazing sight to see one player hanging over the bullpen wall, over the outfield, giving high fives to every player as they walked by. It was Nate. He just appreciates that whole element of the game, the team, kids. It's a great, it's been a real throwback for me.
Yeah, what a great kid. I mean, he was like a 13th round draft choice because he had had Tommy John surgery, I believe, in high school. So the odds were against him ever pitching like as a pro, being hurt that early in his career. And what he's done to be a World Series hero, and just loves kids. He loves baseball, and kids are the game.
Charlie, you told this story. We did a Q&A with you on Friday ahead of the Rangers luncheon that was at the Society for American Baseball Research convention, and I was very fortunate to moderate that Q&A with you and Fergie Jenkins and Colby Lewis. But obviously the question that always comes up for you is the origin story of how you became a knuckleballer. And if you don't tell the line about Lasorda and what he said to you, then we're not doing this right. But tell me the whole story about how you actually transitioned to knuckleballing.
Well, it was really quick. I had pitched 2+ years in Double-A as a very mediocre prospect with a sore arm. And I asked the Dodgers to let me go back to the instructional league, generally set up for younger players. And I went, they let me go. I was kind of hoping my arm would bounce back a little bit. And the first day I was there, an older minor league coach, Goldie Holt, had been in baseball 50 years probably at that time, walked up to me while I was playing catch with another guy, said, "Hey, have you ever thrown a knuckleball?" "No, show me how." And I let him put my hand on the ball to show me a grip. I played catch, threw probably 10 balls, and threw one that didn't spin, looked like a real knuckleball. And I stopped and I walked into the clubhouse. Tommy Lasorda's the manager of that team, going to run it. And I said to him, "Tommy, from now on, I'm going to throw a knuckleball." And he said, "Well, you better, because you're going to be out of this game real quick if you don't come up with something." So, it was just too much fun at that time. And I ended up in the big leagues in less than a year. I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't know what I was doing. But, it was just kind of a fluke. Otherwise, I would have never played in the big leagues.
So for the Dodgers, close to 10 years, you pitched primarily in relief. You made a few years you had some starts but their rotation was pretty solid. So when they had an injury or something, you would pitch in. But then the Rangers, Eddie Robinson was the GM. They purchased you in June of 1980, and you started out in relief, but became a full-time starter after the strike in the second half of 1981, and the rest is kind of history with the Rangers, obviously, just in terms of anchoring a rotation for a decade. What were the circumstances that made the Rangers move you full-time from the bullpen to the rotation?
Well, that was, again, another kind of lucky break, weird thing for me. In 81, I wasn't playing at all. I was just kind of traveling around with the team. I think the trainer was getting more TV time than me. And we were in Seattle, and that dome there, and the bullpen in Seattle is right, 50 feet from the dugout, and it's ground level and right up against the stands. So the fans are 5 feet from you. So back then I smoked a lot. Maybe two, 3 packs a day, a little nervous maybe. And I I would sneak back into the dugout to have a cigarette during the game and kind of hiding behind a door there. And somehow that night I ended up getting in the game and pitched well. And we won the game. And after that game, Zim said to me, when we get back to Texas, I want to talk to you. And okay. And when we got back, I went in to talk to him, and he said he thought I was showing him up by sitting in the dugout, not down the bullpen. And I explained to him, I said, I can't sit out there during the whole game without having a smoke down there. And, it sounds a little goofy, but we talked for a while. And before I left this meeting, I said to him, I think if I pitched all year long, I'd win at least 15 games. And for some reason, later I guess it was about a couple of weeks later, he gave me 5 starts in September. And I think I won 4 and lost 1, had a few complete games. And the next year, 82, I pitched opening day. So, it was an odd situation, and I kind of took advantage of it, but we started pitching then.
I didn't get to cover this, but I can't imagine what it was like for when Nolan arrived here in 1989, and you've got 2 40-year-olds, basically, and there were some young, really talented pitchers here, but 2 40-year-olds on completely different ends of the spectrum anchoring that rotation. What was that whole dynamic like?
Well, any day being around Nolan is a thrill. That is the guy that I watched, before I met him. What a great guy. What a competitor, and obviously a pretty good talent. But it was fun. I think Nolan put us on the map in baseball. We were just kind of the Texas Rangers. Nobody really national media knew anything about us. And when Nolan came, it put us on the map. It really did. And it was big for the Rangers.
So there's a great picture, Evan. The Morning News did one, I think it was in 87, maybe. It was before Nolan got there.
Right.
And it was the cover of the baseball issue.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Charlie sitting on a chaise lounge in Port Charlotte, and the young pitchers, and it was Edwin Correa, Bobby Witt, Paul Kilgus.
Kevin Brown.
No, it was before Brownie.
Oh, okay.
I can't think of the last guy. Witt? But whatever, and they were feeding him grapes, and one of them do you remember that picture we took in spring training that year? But it was just, he was kind of the guy that
Thank
anchored
God, John, no, I don't remember.
It's a class. I have it up in my study.
It sounds like me.
It's a classic picture, and that's what it was. He every year we would bring new guys in, and there would be Charlie just anchoring that rotation. And when Nolan came in, it kind of did give us those two pitchers that you could count on, every 4 days.
Well, yeah, some of those kids we had there, had really good careers. Edwin Correa and Jose Guzman were absolutely terrific. Bobby Witt, you mentioned Paul Kilgus. Yeah, we had some really good young kids. Never quite finished the club. We were good, but never quite had the depth to compete with the better teams.
John, 2 memories I have of Charlie. One, I can't remember if this was 93 or 94, but walking into the clubhouse after a start, and Charlie had pitched that day. And the trend then, Charlie, was, what was the thing where you had the sliding mat where you kind of had booties on and you slid from one side to the other, right? That was a post-game workout.
Yeah, that was because my knees and hips were pretty bad. I had a hard time trying to run, so you needed to do some exercises to get some breathing going. And it was called a slide board, I think. You put a kind of a soft booty thing on, and you could kind of slide back and forth like a skater. So that kind of helped me my last few years.
And so I walk in there and he's on the sliding board going back and forth, and it is like a speed skating training method, right?
I've seen that.
And
yeah,
Charlie,
yeah.
you got the heater going. I think you did have a big cup that might have had some vodka in it, but that was the post-game workout, and it just made me laugh. It was such a fun time to be around. And then he went out and pitched 200 innings in 93. It's amazing at the age of 48. The other memory I have is right towards the end. I think your son Aaron was probably about 15 or 16 then, and he was traveling with you. We were in Cincinnati, and you were talking about just how bad your hip was. But the memory I had of just you enjoying that time with your son, knowing that this was all coming to an end, what was it like to have your son around that much in '94 and to be able to just kind of share that stuff with him?
Well, I've always loved kids in the clubhouse, around the ballpark, and then special to have a teenage kid following me around. Loved baseball, wanted to be a player, didn't make it as a player, but that's family stuff was so much fun. And having him at that point in my career, I knew I wasn't going to last much longer. And, you just run out of time doing things like that. And we'd go on the road and play around the golf once in a while. So it was an absolute blast. And every ball club that I could bring him with allowed it. So it was terrific.
Is there anybody that's consulting with you these days about throwing a knuckleball? Does anybody have it as something they're trying to perfect and do as a big league pitcher?
I've not had anybody recently. I've watched Matt Waldron in San Diego. I think he's got a chance to be a really good knuckleball pitcher. There's a kid in Detroit, in the Detroit organization in like AA, doing pretty well, just starting out this year. So no, I don't have anybody right now that I've been working with. Hopefully I get to see some more guys. Maybe we'll find somebody. With the way pitching is today, you can use somebody that can pitch a lot of innings or pitch more often than the other pitchers. And of course you got to do a good job too. You can't be just out there and losing every time. But I think there'll be somebody come along here and do real well with it.
Well, we appreciate the time. It was great to see you this weekend, and hopefully we'll have you in again pretty soon. But thanks, Charlie, for all the memories for me. And I was fairly young then, and that was the era where players gave the PR guy a lot of crap, to say the least. And Charlie was one of the best. So I appreciate it, Charlie, and thanks for everything. Well, we thank Charlie Hough for that conversation, and I had the distinct pleasure of being around Charlie for a number of years, and the knuckleball certainly caused issues. And this week's Archives in Arlington, I'm just going to tell a couple of quick stories. June 16th, 1986, Charlie pitched 8 1/3 no-hit innings at California. And the Angels that year won the American League West and should have gone to the World Series probably. Rangers take a 1-0 lead into the 9th inning. He gets the first out, and George Wright, who was a big Ranger phenom, had been inserted for defense in left field in the top of that inning bottom of that inning for Gary Ward. So Jack Howell hits a ball to G-Man, who drops the ball. The ball goes to the wall for a 3-base error. Wally Joyner's the next hitter, and he singles to end the no-hitter, ties the game at 1. He goes to second on a pass ball by Orlando Mercado, and after Doug DeCense strikes out, they walk Reggie Jackson intentionally, so you've got runners at first and second, 2 out in a 1-1 game. Charlie strikes out George Hendrick on a knuckleball. The ball gets by Mercado. And then Joyner scores all the way from second base. Rangers lose the ball game 2-1. So in 8 2/3 innings, Hough gives up 1 hit and 2 unearned runs. So it was an amazing game. And the other one, quickly, August 30th, 1987, Gino Petralli has 6 pass balls in this game with Charlie on the mound. And it ties a major league record set by a guy named Harry Vickers in 2002. Now, Harry Vickers
1902.
1902, I'm sorry. Now, Harry Vickers was a pitcher who was catching for the first time in the major leagues in this game in 1902 when he had the 6 pass balls. Charlie's line in that game, 7 innings, 3 hits, 7 runs, none earned, and 6 walks. And in 1987, Charlie had 35 pass balls, which is still the major league record.
Is that the most runs given up in a game with no earned runs?
It's got to be close. I'm not sure. But it's kind of a microcosm of what poor Charlie, he was the losing pitcher in Mike Witt's perfect game, 1-0, the first game of my tenure as the Rangers PR director in 84. But looking at that 87 season, he led the league with 285 in the third innings and 40 starts and won 18 games. It's an amazing chapter, and we got into a few of the stories, but Charlie Hough is one of the all-time greats.
I'm just still stunned. Like, I saw a game, the strangest game ending I've ever seen. I've seen a lot of them with the Rangers, but the strangest game ending I ever saw was a 15-inning game when I covered the Marlins. And they were attempting to intentionally walk, I forget who the hitter was. Charles Johnson was the catcher. Pat Rapp was the pitcher. Threw a pitch in the intentional walk because you still had to throw pitches in. Got by Charles. And so the game ended during an intentional walk. Marvin Bernard scored from third base, and the ball didn't get that far away. So you're telling me, because I didn't know this chapter, Wally Joyner scored from second base on the pass ball on a strikeout.
On a strikeout.
Amazing.
The ball just caromed away, and Ricardo had not caught Charlie a lot, and
probably didn't catch him much after that either.
Right. So it was, I think Gino might have been hurt or something, although Gino had his problem too. Gino had 4 pass balls in an inning in 1987.
I did the one other thing that I did look up, speaking of strange losses, and we were there for a walk-off balk, I think, against Jeff Zimmerman was charged with a walk-off balk.
Yep.
But the Rangers lost at Tampa Bay earlier this year when they allowed a 2-run walk-off infield hit.
Right.
Was the first time in Rangers history that's happened too.
So that's the saga of Charlie Hough, and let's hope the Rangers don't lose a no-hitter like that. So anyway, thank you for joining us this week on Sports Day Rangers.
Don't forget to check out more sports content from the Dallas Morning News, including the Sports Day Insider, my podcast with Kevin Sherrington, our columnist, and usually a staff writer guest to talk about a important topic that we've been covering. That's you can find that in the Sports Day Insider feed, and in the Sports Day Insider feed, you can find this. John?
And if you have any questions for us, we still got to get to this mailbag at some point. Our producer keeps mentioning this, and we really need to do this. So please ask us on X.
There's one issue with the mailbag, and that is that we need mail. So, look, just as a lot of people do with Evan Help Us, just ask me a question on X, tag it Rangers Pod, hashtag it Rangers Podcast, whatever you want to do. Let me know that you want it answered on the podcast, and we will do it. And I want to thank Charlie Hough. We never thank our producer, Chris Blake. So thanks to our producer, Chris Blake, for keeping us on time and editing out some coughs, perhaps, maybe 1 or 2.
And cutting down some of Evan's long-winded answers as well.
But John and I will talk to you next week. We're still working out our guest for next week, but I promise it'll be a top name.
It will be a Ranger.